Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now it's fair to say that No Man's Sky wasn't exactly a critical success on launch back in 2016. I bought it on launch day and added it to my benchmark suite for a while, but more so because it was a highly anticipated title. My feelings about the game itself were pretty much on par with the then majority. I don't need to tell you how much things have changed over the last 6 years. There are plenty of videos asking and answering the same thing: is No Man's Sky good now? The answer is of course a matter of individual opinion, but thanks to Game Pass on PC I've rediscovered this game and have been having an absolute blast playing it, both figuratively and literally. I spend most of my time exploring in creative mode, travelling between planets and wandering around them. Once I land is incredibly relaxing. That said, I'm not here to bring you a review, it's the performance side of things that I want to discuss. Looking back at some of my older videos reveals that entry-level cards like the GTX 750 Ti for example were better suited to lower resolutions and settings. In terms of stated minimum requirements, well, things have changed, because various game updates have no doubt changed the way that this game runs, and I'm always thankful when developers actually update this info accordingly. Alongside the suggested GTX 1060 and RX 470, we have a bit of an outlier, namely Intel UHD graphics. These aren't comparable to either of the aforementioned cards, no matter the CPU you're using, and integrated graphics weren't part of the suggested specs back in 2016. Now UHD 630 graphics can be found inside various 8th, 9th and 10th generation processors, none of which I actually own right now. That's it, video over. I do however have a 12th generation i3-12300 with UHD 730 graphics which will still be the significantly limiting factor in this scenario. UHD 730 graphics share the same core count as UHD 630 graphics and I still can't see them producing playable frame rates here, but let's find out. Now the easiest way to obtain a smooth experience is to set everything to low, use 1080p natively and set the render scale to 10% and totally ruin that native resolution. I said the easiest way, not the best looking. This won't melt your PC, but it probably will melt your eyes, or at the very least give you an incredible headache after just a few minutes of play. It's not necessary to play like this though, and I'm sure no one would want to make this visual sacrifice. Targeting at least 30 FPS makes more sense with this hardware. Thankfully there are a couple of ways to do this. The first is to jump back into the settings and choose 50% res scale instead, while leaving the native output at 1080p, and the settings at their lowest. No matter the setting, there will still be a few moments of stutter as you leave and enter the atmosphere of different planets. It's probably the procedural generation causing this. My i5 and 3050 combo does the same, and it even happens with my 3070, all for the same amount of time, so it's definitely a loading thing. The frame rate will be lower overall when exploring the planets themselves as opposed to just flying through space, so it's worth noting that you should adjust your graphics settings while on solid ground, where things will generally be more demanding. The integrated graphics are certainly the limiting factor here, and sometimes the processor is being utilised at less than 10%, maybe less on occasion. Now I've stuck with 1080p because that is my monitor's native res, but you can of course drop this to 900 or 720p if you want to. The third option for improving performance is probably my favourite, and this is the one we're actually going to benchmark. This is of course FSR. Now FSR will upscale a lower quality image to fit your native output. The first thing to do is enable TAA so that the FSR option actually shows up in the menu. The next thing to do is choose the performance preset, which will render the game at a lower res than the other choices, but it will mean that we'll see better, performance. The game performs quite similar to how it did with 50% of native 1080p rendering enabled, only this time there seems to be a little less stutter overall. The 1.1% lows still do suffer a little bit. In fact, the 0.1% low figure really takes a hit because of those parts where we enter and exit the atmosphere of different planets in the game. It's a difficult one to benchmark really because performance totally varies depending on where you are, but from what I've seen today you should be able to play this game with integrated graphics as stated, providing of course the processor is up to the job as well. I was a bit suspicious at first, things seemed a little sus, but now I'm somewhat satisfied. What's also satisfying is that this game is like 12 gigs still to download because everything is procedurally generated, so you're not downloading all of the planets and stuff onto your hard drive. It's worth revisiting or playing for the first time in 2022, that's for sure, even if you do have a lower end system. But that's all there is to this one. I wanted to talk about this game today because I've been having an absolute blast playing it again recently. I haven't really touched it since 2016, 17 maybe. So to jump back in and find all these changes, well, it was certainly a nice surprise. Thank you for watching then. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, leave a dislike if you didn't. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.